make sure we have a plan in place for it. So give me just a second. I'm going to share a screen. Okay, so hopefully you could all see the screen.
Yes.
So it's just jumping into some ideas about where we're going to begin and what we're going to do. So much like the last 2 days, we're going to utilize the breakout rooms and not going to worry about the whiteboards because they didn't really get used a whole lot, but we are still going to go with the same process. So when we have a breakout room, Tammy will click the button to assign you all to a room. And when you get into the room, if you can quickly, as Ian mentioned yesterday, let's spend the first 30 seconds or so just making sure we know who is in our room with us and where they're from. And appoint a person that can go to the top right of the screen, click on the chat button, and add some information just to create the chats to keep things going. So, what we do know for sure, we don't know when, we can't put a time on it, but we do know eventually the kids are going to be getting back out on the fields. We know that for sure. We just have to make sure that we're as prepared as possible when that time happens. The clubs don't know, the towns don't know. It's an ever-changing environment. So what can we do in the process as we get closer to it? We think about it, and I'm going to go back to those of you who have taken a grassroots course to think back on something. In last Friday's webinar, we discussed 2 of the 6 tasks of a coach. We focused on leading the team and leading the player. This one is more about our circle of influences. So I'm going to give you all 20 seconds just to see if anybody remembers which task of the coach relates to our circles of influences. Lloyd, can you keep track of those 20 seconds and see what they come up with?
Yes, I will.
So Lloyd, what did they come up with?
Well, we'll see. They haven't put anything there in the chat yet. So make sure that.
But we'll keep it going. This one is the people who influence our ability, our circles of influence on the field refers to managing the performance environment. And a list that I put together, and it's by no means a final list, but it's just people that I think that I see on the news right now or see out and about town that are kind of influencing what we're doing on the field. The first one is just our local governments and schools. You know, they're letting our fields open and they're telling us when it's safe or when it will be safe, or kind of setting those parameters for us. Our organization, whatever organization you're involved in, regardless of what the government says we can and can't do, there could be organizations who decide just to wait even longer. Another one that popped into my mind was the parents. And this is in all the courses, people bring up the parents, but this is in a completely different way because there's a big concern, as there should be, with COVID-19. So whether we get on the fields or not, and we get the all's clear, the parents have to say it's okay. And then finally, the children. When it comes right down to it, this is who we're actually for, what we're actually out here for, and this is what we're trying to create the programs for and get back out on the field. So thinking about all that, we're going to go into our first breakout room in a minute. But think about all the information and all the influences. And we're going to take about 5-ish minutes in the meeting room and think about this question. What are some of the steps you and your organization, and if you don't have much influence with your organization, think about some steps that you could possibly do and share with your organization to help prepare for an upcoming season whenever that might happen. So Tammy, if you could put them in the breakout rooms, and when we come back, we'll see what ideas we've come up with.
Okay, I'm going to start the sessions now. Tommy, how long are you requiring for the breakout session today?
5 minutes.
Okay. Going now.
Tammy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so we should start the time now?
Yep.
Or did you start it already?
No, I'm watching the thing. There's still a few people
Okay.
Yeah, there's 10 that haven't been,
signed, which is weird because,
yes.
again, there was only 5 when I did it.
Yes,
It might
but
be.
in the last 3 minutes, you had a whole bunch of people that just got in.
Well, I'll go out of sharing for now
I'll
and join
move
in with
them.
that group.
Move them in.
It would appear everybody's into a room.
Not yet. Well, it looks that way, but it's not showing that way on. Nice.
Tammy, what's up?
Text them, or not text them, send them an email and ask them if you just get that off.
Tammy.
Get that off.
Yes, I hear you.
What's the problem?
There is no problem. I'm just trying
Okay.
to get the
I'm just-
I'm just trying to move the random people, the ones that didn't get assigned.
Because I already know
Into
that
rooms.
Are they not?
email.
They should be in the main meeting room. You could leave them as that group in the main meeting room.
Well, Tommy and I are in the main meeting room, and it's just Tommy and I, unless they don't have their video on. Do we have anybody in the main room with us? Lou, Nick? Tommy, I thought we were going with 8 minutes today.
We can.
I mean, it's fine. I set 5. I just thought we had changed it yesterday.
Well, I'll jump into a room quickly and see how the conversation's going, and then let you know what I come up with about a minute
Rob's
or two
on.
into it.
Rob, are you here? I know. Who's on is Rob.
Yeah.
Tammy, I'll come back to you. Never mind.
What's the matter?
No, I'm jumping.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna let you know, I sent Mark an email already, you on it, that I think the background check rules are fine, but in the system, there's 2 things not checked off, and it's still allowing you to do background check, so it must be hard coded.
I can hear Mary. I can hear Mary.
So
I don't know if she wants us to hear her conversation.
It says, the reporter's background check.
Can you hear her clearly?
24 months,
Yes.
and then it's not.
I'll turn my mic off.
Okay.
Tammy, I think 8 minutes is good because I was in a meeting for about 90 seconds and it was the same person in that meeting talking.
All right.
So it might take a few minutes to give everybody a chance to chime in.
There's a few people have joined late. Like Paige, are you in the room with us? Paige. People have showed up, but I'm not. I'm gonna add time, Tommy. I'll add a couple minutes.
I think you should.
Especially on the first one, if we go to 8 minutes, that's great. And then we'll see how we're doing for time because there's only one more after that.
I think you should add time because they're just starting to talk. I've been in 5 of the 6 rooms.
Okay.
Okay.
How do we know which room we're in?
Who is speaking?
Steve Morniak from the Arlington Soccer Club. I'm down as a guest.
Oh, it says so. You're unsupport. What are you? Did you call in on a phone, Steve?
No, I'm calling from my computer, and I couldn't get through on Safari, even though I changed my preferences. I had to use Google Chrome.
So I don't know. I'm not sure. You're in the room with us, the main room, because your device. It says your device is unsupported, and can't be placed into the breakout room. I'm not sure why.
Lloyd, do you want to chat with them briefly about the first question?
Could you please repeat? I'm trying to get in one room and it doesn't let me in. I have to figure out why.
Why don't you just stay on the home page?
Okay.
And the question is, what are some of the steps you and your organization can take to prepare for an upcoming season?
Okay.
So you and Steve, if you want to have a little discussion.
We're supposed to have Frank, Lou, Nick, Paige, Rick Pereira in that conversation. So why don't they go ahead?
Go with whoever's on the home screen.
Whoever's talking. Like, we only have another minute and 30 seconds, so. Steve, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Lloyd, do you want to engage conversation?
Could I get in the same room with Paige? We're in the same organization.
Whatever device you're on won't allow us to put you in a room. And actually, Paige, I believe, is in this main room with us right now, but she's not speaking.
Yes. Let me see. Yes. Paige is in here.
Yeah, she has her microphone off.
Hello?
Okay.
Whoever that, Frank, I think you're getting a lot of feedback.
This is Lou.
Lou, you have 2 devices on?
I couldn't connect with my computer, so I called in on the phone.
Okay, I got you now. That's why I can't get you into a breakout room because you're on the phone.
Yeah, and I heard your conversation, but it seemed like I was muted until about a second ago.
I kept saying, Lou, I tried to move you a couple times. All right, we have about 15 seconds left, so I'm going to start ending the breakout room now.
Okay.
Okay. Before we get back to the whole group, why don't you guys chat about that question that is on the screen right now?
Coming back right now.
They're not going to. Everybody's coming back.
Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Hey, Mike is here.
I've been here. We had a great group chat. I don't know about the others.
What group are you in, Mike?
Mike is in group 1.
I hit the jackpot with Mike, just saying.
Me too.
Well, that's not fair.
Alrighty then.
This is Frank. I don't know which group I'm in.
You came in late. I think you came in late, so you didn't make the group chat. So the next breakout session, you'll be in another room.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Tommy. I think everybody's back.
Okay, so hopefully the conversations went well. In the past webinars, some great information was shared. I'm gonna call out to a group in group 2 in breakout room 2. If somebody can share your thoughts that came through your discussions.
Sure. This is. Go ahead, Daryl.
Okay, Brian, Daryl, Jeff. One of you, take it away.
Jeff, you want to go ahead and speak for your group?
Yep, sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we talked about there have to be very clear communications set up with parents. There needs to be expectations of the approach, and that should be documented, both with text as well as graphics, so that parents can get a good handle on what we're planning to do. We felt parents will most likely want to monitor what we're doing so that they live up to those expectations that we set. And then we talked briefly about possibility needing a separate liability waiver, just so that parents are aware that there could be an increased risk. Even if we follow all the steps, outlined by the CDC or other organizations for sports, there could still be risk with COVID-19, and they just need to be aware of that and release the clubs, specifically of any liability.
Thanks for that. Anybody else from group 2? Daryl, anything you want to add in?
Yes. Yeah. So part of what I want to add is from the expectation, we agreed that there has to be well advanced, thought out plan for training, communicated to the parents in clear language, so that we can set their boundaries, the coach's expectations, the club expectation, and the role and the responsibility of the player, so that the parents can kind of make the decisions and establish some comfort level in advance to what the club wants to do. And then we need to live by those expectations the first time around, especially making sure that we are living to those expectations, so that the parents can see and get a comfort level, as well as the player. One of the things we also discussed is what happens if a parent comes up and says, "Oh, I'm good, I don't have to worry because we all had it and we've been fine." Us as coach, from a HIPAA perspective, and these are kids, they may say it in front of other kids who hears it is going to relay it back to the parents. How do we manage something like that?
I think that could be something that the organization could set some ground rules for, so it doesn't put the individual coach in a situation like that. So based on the best information that they're getting, help the coaches by giving them some parameters. So if they are getting in those situations, what are some exceptions and possibly what are not exceptions? Breakout room 1. Do you have anything else you would like to add or share with us from your discussions?
Was breakout room 1 the one with Mike, me, and Lawrence?
Yes, it was.
Okay, cool. Forgive me for taking point here, but with that question that was posed, what are the steps that you can take to prepare for the upcoming season? Again, I can only talk for our own organization. I kind of looked at it in two ways, what can you do for the players? What steps can you take for the players, and what steps can you take as an organization? For the players, something that we are doing is taking or trying to reach almost every kid via a Zoom session. So we try to keep with the teams that we already had and try and show maybe a 15 to 30 minute Zoom session just on little kind of the things that the top techers is showing, little tricks, or not tricks, but little skills particular movements, patterns, touches, all that sort of stuff. We're also trying to use our social networking to like post different videos, try and get the players, you know, even while they're in quarantine, to be kicking a ball, even if it's something as silly as, well, not silly, but something as small as practicing their step overs and standing still. As an organization, I guess what we think is, you know, keeping communication with our towns, keeping communication with our leagues to kind of, you know, almost have a plan A, B, C, D, E, and F, you know, all the way through to Z, if that's possible. You know, to try and, if and when, and like you said earlier, Tommy, was that we will eventually get back onto the fields. If that does come in late July, what have we thought of that we can, you know, put into place? There was one question that we started to get into, and I don't know if anyone wants to answer this or whatever, but it was about like PPEs or tryouts, so like player performance evaluations. I know that from our organization, we tend to do it once a year, and it'll be at the end of the spring for the fall. I don't know if any other towns, you know, change in between the fall and the spring leagues, but I'd be very interested in like what steps people are doing to prepare for the fall season, knowing that there may not be a spring season to take them tryouts. But
you're jumping into our next breakout.
Oh, beautiful.
Because you're right on track, and that's the you know, so what can we do, knowing the environment that we're in, and some things we could start considering for when that time comes. I'm going to jump into one more group, breakout room 6. Anything that you would like to add or share to what's been said already?
So, Tommy, in breakout room 6, you have Claudia, David, Lawrence, Sarah. Okay, those are the people that were there. So, we're expecting something from them.
If not, no problem. We'll jump on, move things forward. Loy, any comments in the chat boxes or questions to address?
No, so far. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. So, a few things that popped into my head when I started thinking about this question, and I think we've kind of talked around them somewhat, but I think there's stuff we could also add to it. For example, we're already reaching out to the parents and the players. Maybe we could put in there the questions about who intends to come back when the season starts, you know, say give different options that if the season started in July, if the season started in September, you know, just trying to get a feel for who may be coming back and who may not be coming back. And then we have at least some data that we could start collecting, or we start collecting the data. So when the time comes, we have an idea of what we're potentially working with. It can change, but at least we have an idea. Another one is making sure, I actually flip-flop these. Another one is just making sure that the parents are aware of what's going on and that the organization is on top of things, and they're going to start making sure that when the time comes, off we're going to go. And then the third one that I came up with is just continue to share as much information as we can. And I mean, without being overkill and repeating it, but sometimes some of the information does need to be repeated. So finding out, putting together a pathway that's going to help make sure we're sharing the information that keeps people informed and aware, so when the time comes, they're able to get on board as quickly as possible. So I think those, from my thoughts, I think they kind of tie in a lot to what Jeff and Daryl and Hummus all brought forward. So going into the next one, and I've already had somebody that kind of got that going for me. Tammy, we're going to be starting our second breakout.
Okay.
So we have to put teams together. We have to find a way to organize players when that time comes. Within your group, think about some ways that you can implement or start to implement organizing teams. What are some methods you can use? So again, we'll take about another 5 or 6 minutes, and let's see what we've come up with, and hopefully we can put a list together for ideas.
Okay, I'm gonna have everybody please unmute their microphones. I've tried to unmute all of you, and now you are going into your break rooms.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, just go.
Tommy?
Yes.
There's a comment that you sound like you're in a wind tunnel. I think it's because you're standing up and you're talking into your microphone. So
I send you a message to get closer.
All right.
So it assigns all these people.
But I am in a wind tunnel. How many breakout rooms do we have?
5.
5.
Loy and Tammy, if you want to jump into the breakout rooms just to see who, make sure everybody's got audio and they're just having a chat. Tommy, you can start a conversation with anybody that's left in this main room.
Okay, I'm going into one.
Nick and Sarah and Steve.
Yeah.
You are in the main room. This is Tommy. So
Yep.
we could have our chat right here. So if you want to share some ideas as to what you think the organizations can start doing to be prepared when that time comes.
Could you repeat the end of that one more time?
What are some methods your organization can implement when the time comes to start organizing teams?
Well, obviously, we're going to have to do a registration process. It's going to be difficult to ask people to pay. Our board is going to have a remote meeting in first Sunday of May, and I'm going to suggest that we have people register. We use Admin Sports, register without completing the payment, which would give us a start. A lot of our teams just go back to being their previous teams if they're not a tryout team. So we'd start with that right there, putting them back on their old teams, unless there's a reason to move them.
Sure. Thanks for that. Anyone else in the main room care to share? Sarah, are you with us? Is Beth in the main room still?
Hello?
Hello, is this Beth?
Oh, no, this is Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Anything you want to add to the conversation?
Well, I think the concern is players that are moving up to larger teams. And I guess we'll just look for coaches' feedback. If you're going from 9v9 to 11v11 and the team's getting bigger, roster's getting bigger, So that's, something we're looking at, and we don't collect coach feedback in the fall, so we would need to do that now, which could be challenging. But that's probably what we're going to need to use to make any changes we need to make.
Sure. So, they're all steps, and everything I think is a consideration, because these are not the normal times.
Right.
We have a few more in the main room. If anybody else would like to share in, Leo or Beth. No?
Hi, Tommy, it's Beth. I don't have anything to share in right now. We just tuned in because we had it at 4 o'clock, so we completely missed you. But we're tuning in to the very end because this is something that's just so near and dear to my heart. Tryouts are so stressful for kids, and to put them through tryouts after having no soccer all season is really tough.
It is. So do you have any alternative suggestions that you might be able to throw out to see if this is what we can do instead of adding the added pressure of a tryout?
I don't think that my opinion is necessarily the one that's represented by our soccer club, but I think a good reminder for all the adults is to remind everybody that it's not the World Cup, that if they end up on the wrong team in the fall because maybe they were on a team in the fall and you just kind of place them where based on coach feedback and then it's not perfect in the fall, it's okay. They're not going to the World Cup and adjustments can be made in the spring. I think just to remember that our first goal as coaches is to make sure that kids love the game of soccer and learn teamwork and playing and competing, not you absolutely have to be placed on the right team at all times. But that's just my opinion.
Well, and that's probably a message, whether we're in a time of crisis like this or just in general. It's, what's the purpose of what we're trying to achieve? Tammy, how much time do we have in the breakout?
Another minute, Tommy.
Okay, so with our group, I'd like to have, because I think we have some great ideas, and I think we're going to find a lot of similarities. But if we can, someone from our group, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of these thoughts with the whole group, I think that would be beneficial.
I don't know what that was.
Say whatever's in the microwave is done.
It's not my microwave. I was trying to get into room 5, and the wheel is just spinning still. Did you get into 5, Lloyd?
I got into all the rooms but 5. It's spending.
I don't know. I can't get in there, but there's 4 people in there.
But this is the second time, okay, that it's happened. It's always one room that I can't get in.
All right, I'm going to send everybody back now.
Okay. Oh, Tommy?
Yep.
Tell me who are in whatever room, and I'll tell you the name, so that way you can say, who you
3, 4, and 5 in the main room.
We don't know who's in 5, though.
No, I know who's in 5. Henry, Lawrence, Maureen, and Steve.
Okay.
If you click on the room, a list of names will come out.
All right. You're keeping an eye on the chat room, right?
We're back.
Hi.
We're all back. Time's up. We're back.
Welcome back, everybody. So we have had a really nice chat in the main room with the people that didn't get assigned. And I'm hoping one of those people could share some of the discussion points we had. So Beth or Sarah or Steve?
I guess you're going to have to call somebody.
Well, Lloyd, is everybody unmuted?
If Tommy calls on you, you're going to have to unmute yourself to speak. Because everybody's
Yes,
muted.
they can do that. Yes.
Okay, so let's try with breakout room 3. Lloyd, who is in 3?
Will be Daryl, Lawrence, Nick, Paige, and Rich. So whoever wants to talk, it needs to unmute themselves.
Well, okay, I'll go. So, I'm fortunate in the sense that I coach for a club, and we usually have a good understanding of where a player is, where a player is heading, or whether they go in a positive direction or in a negative direction. We usually do not have a lot of movements throughout the year, when whether a player moves up or down. Tryout is a little bit different. The way we are structured is we usually in advance will offer a group of players a spot in a specific team if they were moving up or if they're staying put. We usually offer them a spot in advance. So anybody who shows up to try out, you're showing up to try out because we do not know where they fit, whether they're going to go down or whether they're going to go up, or all usually new players. So we don't run into a lot of that challenge at all. So in that aspect of it, if we are looking
We appear to have lost Daryl, so is somebody else on
Anybody else want to continue from group 3? If not, we could jump into group 4. Lloyd, who are members from group 4?
Group 4 is a very interesting group. We got Brian, Frank, Jeremy, and Michael Morrislow.
So anybody from group 4 want to share where your discussion went?
Sure. I'll jump in. You know how shy I am. So we had a pretty neat discussion about organizing to implement, starting organizing. I guess a little bit of where it started off was kind of picking up from the online activities. I think one of the key things to helping to recognize who is going to be available and who's going to be ready to come out when the all clear comes is for those organizations that did a lot of online activities that the kids have been practicing, they've been preparing and the such. So Frank shared some pretty good ideas there. Oops, there's a little bit of background. The other two is one of the things that it's going to kind of determine how we organize teams is going to have to be with guidance from how can we take to the fields? Is there going to be social distancing limitations? And if so, that may change how we organize teams, because it might not be teams, it might be groups for training purposes only. So some of that discussion is I'll add into that part is that we talked about you're going to have age differences because when you poll your parents, let's say we get the go ahead that we can be on the fields, and I'm going to be extremely optimistic and say the first week of June, but so you poll your parents, you find out only 30% of the kids or 30% won't return. The parents just don't want them to participate, and it's going to be training only. So, our perspective, if it's training only and it's going to be no contact, well, there's no reason why you can't mix your, grades 3, 4, 5, 6, together as a group for training purposes, because it's truly skill development. We did talk a little bit about Jeremy, talked about, their program. They've got some, honestly, they have a really, it's a small but a great program to the point that they've got, pretty much an expectation the majority of everybody will return. But if they don't, you just have to be in a position to rejigger teams. Some large organizations might be faced where they have, they want to get some games in or practice in, depending what they can do. But, they might have to combine some Division I with Division II players to create a team. And so how, they go about doing that is just, it's really what it comes down to is clear, concise, transparent communication to the parents of what the expectations are. And so, had a good group.
That's helpful in creating the parameters. And I think one of the other things, the key ones that you hit on, is we might be having creative ways of setting up the environment. So it may not just be practice as usual. It might be academy style training or small group training, however that might work out. Thanks for that, Mike. Anyone in group 5 have anything else they'd like to share?
In group 5, we have Henry, Lawrence, Maureen, and Steve.
Lawrence, anything you'd like to share? I haven't heard from you since this morning.
I guess not. What about Steve?
All right, thank you for that. Loy, any comments in the chats that might have some questions to be added in?
To tell you the truth, the chat is being very quiet. No,
Maybe
we have
the
no
breakouts
comments.
are that engaging. So we'll move forward with it. That's okay, because I'm sure based on everybody's comments, the conversations are going well. Whether or not we want to share that, that's a different story. I know Beth, who was in the group that was in the main room, brought up a very good point. And sometimes it's the ongoing reminder that we're going to be putting teams together, not creating a World Cup roster, and making sure that the parents are aware that we're trying to put an environment together for the kids to play. A few ideas or thoughts or general conversations that I was thinking of, and again, it's amazing. We talked about the value of the information we get from other webinars, but how we're going to deal with these environments. And one of them, and I think this is kind of reiterating, is several comments, is reaching out to parents and players to continue to create the awareness of the upcoming season. If we know which players intend to return, we might be able to start with core groups, maybe who they were on teams with last season, which is also brought up in the main room at least. I'm not sure if any other rooms brought that up. But if we know the majority of the kids are coming back that were on a team in the past season or the last time they played, we might have a core of players to get the process going. Another one that some towns use is just trying to get a random tryout format. Get the players signed up, maybe combining some age groups, getting them into different groups that they're not normally used to work with. I think each town, every town should have a director of soccer development. And those directors of soccer development not only can help with the process, but they also have the ability to reach out to other organizations and share information and try to work together to try to create a program, which echoes a little of what Mike was talking about, is that communication, finding the people who could connect with other people to make sure that we're able to get the groups together. And the last one, which probably could be the most challenging, is if the time allows and the resources allow, and you have the time to set it up, is finding a time just to have a tryout. When can we get the players out on the field? Where can we get them going? Where can we organize? And that means if we don't have a season immediately and it's long-term planning, maybe we can put something together that gets the players within their groups, which gets them into the formal tryout process that we had before. I'm not saying that one way is going to work better than the other. And yes, let's try to go to item number 3 because that's the one we're most comfortable with. But it's taking those options and figure out which ones work best for us. So I'm going to pause there for a moment and give you a minute to write anything in the chat box of additional comments or anything you'd like to share before we get closer to wrapping this up, and just see where those discussions might take us. So let's take about a minute to process all the information we had, and if you want to share anything in the chat box, and then Lloyd can help share it with us.
Okay. Tommy, James had a question that you more or less answered, but he would like to know from the attendees that what plans are they formulating right now in order to place the kids in possible teams. If any organization is talking right now on kids placement.
Through our discussions that we've had through webinars, there has not been discussions about what anyone has been doing, because the environment hasn't given them that starting point or the go ahead. I think we're in a little bit of a situation where we're still in the waiting phase. I'm not sure, Mike, if you have any other insights that you can
let
share.
me share with everybody. Most of the people here in Massachusetts, I see we have some friends in from New Jersey and the such, but we run a program, District Select program. I think most of you are all familiar with 1,200 kids playing it. And we had a meeting with the directors a couple nights ago about what if we have very limited time to run tryouts. Because, those of you that are putting teams together for the fall, you may have some time to perform assessments throughout the month of July and into August. For districts, if it starts the first weekend after July 4th, we may only have 2 weeks to get this together. For the fall programs, it could be you may only have 3 weeks to get it together, depending on where the state goes and what assemblage is like. May not be able to run formal assessments or tryouts, whatever you want to call it, until August. So one thing we're looking at is basically saying, let's keep the kids right now. The first blush is keep the kids on the same team from the spring to the fall. Up an age group, of course, but keep them at that level. Go to the coaches for any assessments that they may have about, is there anything that, you want to share with us that would, if you have 16 kids, are there 2 kids that should be higher, or 2 kids that should be lower, or 3 kids that really shouldn't be playing? They haven't played. Hopefully none of these kids puts on, a lot of weight while staying at home. But, all of a sudden at the older ages, at the 14s or 15s, your 7th, 8th graders, you could have a disparity in what they left the spring like and coming back in the fall. The other is you have roster spots to fill in, and is to perform personal assessments. I've seen people thinking about doing online assessments. Personally, I'd rather have them come to a field when it's allowable and let me watch from a distance than let me watch from like a 2x2 screen. So that I'm personally saying don't fall for that and don't do it yourself. But you perform assessments. If it's permissible, assemblage says, say, listen, we can get so many people together, but keep the contact low. Is to run some, skill assessments, to fill in the spots. I don't really think, quite honestly, the way things look, that we're going to have the ability to do a full bore 48 kids on a field trying out for 2 teams. So we're going to have to come up with definitely some modifications for this. This also might necessitate some programs to possibly change some policies about rejiggering teams from the fall to the spring. A lot of people keep their teams exactly the same from fall to spring, but this might call for mid-season fall adjustments or midwinter adjustments where you will have to find an indoor facility to run a full-blown assessment tryout compared, as as if it was something you typically would run in May or June. So there's certain things that we're looking at.
Thank you for that. Help to have you on the line because that's some information that I think is beneficial to share with everybody. And thanks for everybody for joining in on another session. I think once again, the information that you're sharing in the breakout room is just proving to be so incredibly valuable. And I think we shared a lot of positive information and outlooks during this. And if we could work together, hopefully we could create a more seamless transition when the time comes. Now, please remember, if there's ever a time that you need to bounce these ideas off of someone or you need some assistance, you can reach out to anybody in our technical department, and we're always willing to share ideas and help make sure you're going down the right path when the time comes for us to get there. Because we're coming in on the hour mark, so we're going to wrap things up. I do not intend to go anywhere. I'll be on the line for at least another 5 or 10 minutes. But a final
Can I just
remark
add
from
something
Ian,
real
who
quick?
isn't with us right now.
Tommy?
Can I
Yes,
just add something?
please, Daryl. Please add something.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is, for those high school age, because I coach for a club, a bunch of my kids actually play high school soccer, so they are usually gone for the fall. I have a couple of them who don't want to play high school soccer, so they stay. The fall team is always a combination of kids from either team A and B, or maybe a top level player playing at a younger age, and we say we're going to stretch you by playing you up in age. So it's always a combination of sometimes one year younger and sometimes a kid on a B team that needs to work and stuff like that. So we will always combine them for anyone who's thinking of organizing teams going into the fall. So from a club perspective, we do this already. So if that can help you at all, consider it.
That does help because a lot of environments are different. They don't have the ability to do single age groups. Sometimes just by the nature of their registrations, they have to do 2 age groups or have kids play up. So that's always something that has to be taken into consideration. So
Tommy?
for anyone who does need to jump off or has something else going on their Friday evening in their plastic bubbles, feel free to jump off anytime you need to. For those of you who have more questions, I'll be staying on for the next several minutes, and I'll be more than happy to have those discussions with you, so I look forward to them. So our final message from Ian, before I stop sharing the screen, please remember to wash your hands. Everybody stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming webinars. More coming next week. Look out for some messages for Rob that'll give us some updates on which ones to look out for. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Tommy, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Rob, everybody, nice seeing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Tommy, first
Yes.
of all, we have a whole room 5, the room we couldn't get in, they couldn't get out. Marie just texted me and said, "Are we supposed to still be in our breakout rooms?" So all of room 5 has, I couldn't get in there during the breakout, and neither could Loy, and now we can't get her out. They're just stuck there because I'm looking. There's no way to get them out.
So
you want to
let me
send
ask
her a
you,
text and ask them if they just want to log out and log back in?
I'm gonna have
If
them
they
hang
some
up and
questions.
log back in.
okay, so let me ask you this question. It's a legal question. Are we going to get charged with online kidnapping?
I don't think.
I think
so.
it's just, I think it's online social distancing. They had to be a room apart from us due to COVID-19 concerns.
There you go.
Not really, because you had 4 people very close together right there. So.
Well, they now have to go into a 14-day mandatory quarantine because they didn't social distance.
No, I think by now they should have definitely perfected their quartet song that they want to perform for us.
Is Beth still on the chat? Because she had a question in the chat. I was trying to get your attention.
I actually am. Beth is here, and I'm actually still on the chat. Is it okay that I just ask a question in general?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
So my general question is for MISA in general is, are you planning on sending out a general email to the soccer clubs? Because it seems to me, I'm in Winchester and we're part of Bays, and it seemed that Bays took its direction from you as far as the season. So are you planning on sending an email just to kind of recap this and say we touched base on the tryouts and this is what our feeling is, or are you just going to let everybody do their own thing? Because I'm reading the chat.
Okay. So first off, Bays did not take any instruction from Massey Soccer. Bays made an independent decision to cancel their schedule. Okay? Not the season. Only Massey Soccer can cancel the season.
Okay, so I'm so sorry about that. I didn't mean to misspeak. I'm just repeating what the soccer club repeated to us. So I'm not part of the soccer club. I'm just a coach. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and so the others can hear as well, because you're going to hear some other leagues are going to start canceling their schedules. Okay, there's a leagues committee meeting tomorrow, and so what's very important about it, and I'm glad you asked the question, because it's the old, what we're dealing with, as you could imagine, is in these times is the old whisper down the lane. So what's happening is, because schools have announced that they're closed the rest of the season, many of our organizations will have difficulty getting permits to use school fields, because it's most likely permits, schools will either start releasing permits either June 19th or maybe even the 29th. Technically, they can't give out permits for their fields to be used while the school is considered closed for classroom instruction. Okay? Parks and Rec can give out their fields differently from schools. However, Parks and Rec report on giving fields out to the town or the city Department of Health, which then in turn relies on the State Department of Public Health. We were hoping today, when Governor Baker spoke, that he was going to talk about the extension of the assemblage policy, which is what we're all under, and he said nothing. Our expectation is that the assemblage policy, which governs youth sports right now, will definitely be extended past May 4th. So we're waiting to hear from the governor, because if our member leagues cancel their schedules, but we can get kids out on the field, let's say first or second week of June, or even June 15th, our member organizations, all of the towns and clubs that belong to Massey Soccer, they can start soccer activities under the guidance from the state and from us to see what's permitted, and they can do whatever they want straight from the rest of June, July, and August, because basically we will just take the spring season and say the spring season is over August 31st. So we've got a lot of organizations that are planning. The reason why we're conducting a lot of these coaching conference discussions is to share with you, but also mostly to learn from you what it is that you're going to need our help with when we do return to play. And so Ian, Tommy, and Loy are working on modified instructional guidelines so that if social distancing still must be maintained, well, how do I run, a practice that typically has players shoulder to shoulder, or closely following each other to shield a ball? Well, we're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to modify instructional guidelines, get it out to everybody, so that our goal is to get kids on a piece of grass with a ball at their feet. We want to reconnect them with the sport. We want them to pick up their passion for the sport, because our concern is, even if games are canceled, we can run lots of instructional activities to keep this passion going, because the last thing we want is to totally just basically lock up, see you later, September 1st, is that there's a lot of children that were marginally on the edge about liking the sport or not. They won't come back. And so we want to reconnect as many as possible with the game, with activities as much as we can. So we're very optimistic that we'll be able to help our towns and clubs across the state get back on a piece of grass with kids and reigniting the passion and flame for this game.
I have a question if no one else wants to chime in, if that's okay.
Sure.
Go ahead. And
Also,
room 5 is back.
Yep.
I want to start with, good God, it's good to hear Tommy Geis's voice again, and thank God he's not wearing that Pittsburgh jumper. But anyway, back to my question. I know that, Mike, you were just talking about, mass youth soccer, I'm not saying that you make the final call, but you will make the final call if all leagues have to, suspend the season. I know, like you were just saying, that Bays may have suspended their season and all that. So my question is, and again, this is totally like a hypothetical that, let's say June, the last week in June, the social distancing measures are relaxed and whatnot. Where do individual towns stand with almost having an independent league, quote unquote? Almost like organizing something themselves. I can only speak for like ourselves in Wilmington that we have like an in-town league. I'm sure most towns do that as well up until they reach the travel age. We were thinking, some soccer is better than no soccer, exactly like what you're saying. Is like we do want to get them out if and when we can. But like, let's just say seasons are cancelled and whatever, and social distancing is relaxed. Where does mass youth soccer or any sort of governing body, because at the end of the day we report, well not report, but our governing body, with us having sort of like an in-town league in the summer league, if you will.
This is the longest question I've ever heard.
I'm so sorry. It's taking me forever.
I know. No. Because no. That's good. I'm glad you wrote it because. So here's what we're taking a look at. It's a great question. Is that first off, I'm going to use two terms and I want to make sure it's clear. Leagues cancel their schedules. They don't cancel seasons.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. No, but. And so people understand, because what happens is people say, well, Bays or Mays or Middlesex or Neshoba or Essex or CCLNE or NEP or whatever it is, well, they've canceled the season. And no, they just canceled the schedule. But a season can still be opened. And let's say the games can be played. Games of some sort can be played. So here's the kicker. The first thing, number one, is to make sure that everybody participating from your organization is registered and affiliated. That's number one. Yeah. So if you plan to do anything with high school age kids, they haven't registered for the spring yet, or some have. But if they haven't, you're going to need to make sure that they're registered. Okay? So you can schedule friendlies against other towns that are nearby or clubs that are nearby, as long as they're, copacetic with it and they've scheduled that they've got everybody registered and affiliated. For the most part, folks, if the kids played last fall, they're all set for the spring. If you have any ads that want to participate for this 2-week period, then you just send it in to Rachel Wu, normal process, we get them going and out and play. Real easy. We're trying to reduce barriers to making this take place.
But it's easier for to join in.
Yeah,
if it works.
And then one of the other things we're looking at as well as for discussion point is mostly for the more, I'm going to say that the middle to higher competitive level is that we've got district select program, and if we're able to open it up and run it, and it's going to have games and the such, is to get as many kids to sign up for that. Typically, most of the players that play in it are Town Division 1 and some Town Division 2 level of players. And as we all know, a large majority of our Town Division 1 players are dual rostered on CCLNE teams and or on NEP teams, where they're playing some are playing the MPL level, but most of them are playing in the Premiership level of the NEP. So it's a higher level of play. So the other part, though, is the towns are Middlesex has asked about this, and Essex is asking. Bayes is involved. That we run a modified summer program out at Lancaster, so that so it's for non-district select, and so that you may have, let's say, Wilmington has got a girls 14 team that they really, that's maybe made up of 2 girls 14 teams that want to get some summer play. And
This is
then
a big.
Burlington has it, and Natick has it, and Wayland has it, and so forth. So what we'll do is we'll put the feelers out there. We'll say, give us a team. Give us what you think the strength is, and we'll start building a schedule. But we're going to have to run it out in Lancaster, because if we try and wait for people to get field permits and accessibility and everything, it's going to be very difficult.
I think that's a really good thing.
One of the constraints we may have, folks, is that a lot of the games, then once again, there's going to be restrictions, could be for youth sports, is one and dones. Come out, play, go home. Don't hang around. Try and instead of 10 minutes between games, 20 minutes between games. So you have so there's not a lot of crossover in the parking lot. There's all these new little things that we need to start taking into consideration. But our goal is to say, hey, listen, find out what the restrictions are and work within them, not find out what the restrictions are and say, oh, forget it, it's too tough. Because it will not be too tough. We're going to find ways to make sure that we keep the passion for the sport alive as long as we can until the new normal becomes a newer normal, so to say. But there was a rumor going around that we're advocating that kids play with masks on. No, we're not unless they're required.
Yeah.
But no.
Thanks, Mike. I'll answer my question and more, especially when you start talking about District Select League and that sort of program. I think that's going to be great, and it's definitely something that us at Wilmington will definitely be looking into. Right. That's such a big thing. Thank you.
And once again, we're going to create activities for programs to run. So running camps this summer may be difficult, if at all possible. So we're going to provide content for programs for their kindergarten, first, second, third graders to put on summer clinics, where we keep it underneath the radar of a camp. It's a skill development clinic. If scrimmages are permissible, of course, then we will provide the concept for that. But it's that Lloyd, Tommy, and Ian are currently hard at work and will be over the next month. Have basically turnkey, ready-made programs to share with our organizations.
I just have a follow-up question to what you were talking about for potentially something out in Lancaster this summer. You mentioned that a lot of the kids are D1 and 2. Would you envision that the games that you're offering are available for all skill levels, or would you be targeting the higher level players?
The D1 and 2 is district select level of play. That's a program we've had for 30 years.
Right. So for your other one.
It would be all levels of play. It all comes down to who wants to put teams in. Do we have enough division? Here's one of the challenges that we have, and I don't want to get into a commentary about the games that some leagues play on how they slot their D1, D2, D3 teams, because one league's D3 may be another league's D4, or one league's D2 may be another league's D1. Okay, so what we'll do is that we will open it up. For mostly it'll be for travel level, not for in-town, because we don't want. If we have in-town recreational, please keep it local. Find a patch of grass at a Parks and Rec and keep it local. But for the travel kids, to give them a little bit of something that they may have missed, or during the spring, is to give them some play. We'll go to the leagues. We'll take a look at where they were slotted, in their placements, because all the leagues have got the placements and schedules and everything done. And then we'll find out, number one, is it a compilation? Because sometimes somebody might say, and it happens for tournaments a lot, they put a tournament together, which could be the team is half D2 and half D3. And so where do you slot that team? We'll do our best to give them games, and then we just hope for the best that it's these are games that are they're friendly. There's no scoring, there's no stats, there's no standings. It's just getting the kids out there playing. But it'll be for all travel levels when we take a look at this, assuming we can do it. That's a great question, Beth. I appreciate that. Thanks.
If I may ask a question, I don't know
Yes,
if I
Claudia.
can. Yeah, so you know, just mostly I assist. I have no really participation in the club as an assist coach, volunteer. But as a parent, so right. So how do we keep the kids motivated when we're telling them there's not going to be any possibility of mobility? Like if they train really hard this year and there's no option for them to get, like know that all this coming year they're going to, so that's what I'm hearing, and I'm thinking of how the kids are being motivated when they don't see there's any sort of opportunities for them. So that's my question.
That's twofold. There's the mic of it, and there's some activities we're putting together for them that are many of them are on our website right now, is trying to find the activities that will keep them involved in soccer, like activities that they could do in small groups with their family, siblings, games that they could play that are very skillful. So stuff that they could do like soccer golf, for example. And it's on our website under the coaches section.
Yeah.
The lesson
Yeah,
plan.
no, and we are on top of that. But I mean, like, it's more about the competitive part. Like, I can be in a higher level team, or I can move up, or like they will see like it's locked for a whole year. So like that's why like when they say like completely that there's no way to do any sort of evaluations. Or, I mean, I'm interested in knowing what others are doing and what others.
Yes, I think the question is more, for if Arlington Youth Soccer cancels its select team tryouts, how do you keep the kids who are on, those lower division 3, 4, 5, 6 teams motivated when they're going to miss out on the opportunity to perhaps play on that select team? Did that kind of summarize it, Claudia?
Yeah, I think. Hi, Jeff. Jeff and I who was my first coach I assisted ever. So yeah. For example, that there's not going to be tryouts. All year he's been like, he's been like thinking, maybe next year I try for the select team, and then boom, then there is no such thing, or like just knowing that there is possibly a way of rewarding them for the work, or like something that motivated them if they did. I mean, I'm thinking in general, and just curious about what the thoughts.
I mean, several of these things happen to kids all the time. Whether it's an injury or we have a really bad season of weather that everything gets canceled and everything gets pushed back, or so most kids have experienced some sort of delay in the way they play. As coaches and as the adults in the organization, all we could do is just keep them encouraged and keep them motivated, because eventually it's going to happen again. So trying to find activities for them to do, trying to find games for them to watch. I know Rob just made some or U.S. Soccer just put some connections with, these are some really neat games to watch. Rob has the FIFA tournament going for the kids to play online to keep them engaged and keep them involved in the game, but keeping the game at the forefront. Another thing that the kids come out with is it's okay to have a little bit of that hunger left in them. We tell coaches when you're running a training session that when you say it's done at 6 o'clock and coaches say, well, I want to go till 6:15 because the kids really love it, it's important to end it while there still is that little bit of hunger left in them that they go away wanting more. So right now we're in that process of helping the kids identify what more might be.
Let me,
Mike, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's you've got these kids that are trying, and all of a sudden, this is my year that I'm going to break out. I've been developing my skills. I've been, playing futsal all winter long. This was going to be my spring that I'm going to make the top team, and then all of a sudden, poof, I don't get a chance to showcase my abilities, and that if there's no change, I'm going to be slid right down to the same level of play that I played last spring. Is that the concern, Claudia?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, unfortunately, what really stinks about it is that we're going to have a lot of children learning adult lessons at a young age. So what can we do to modify that? And here's some of the things that are being discussed. One of the things that we can do to modify that is we're working with the leagues right now to eliminate roster freezes for the fall season. And so
That's what I was thinking, like maybe moving it to, maybe at the level of spring, there could be like another tryout then. So at least,
let me go through with what I so I'm talking to my counterparts in other states, and we do have some people from other states on here, but so some of my counterparts up in the middle part of the country, what they're looking at with some of the leagues is that halfway through the season, is that they will have assessments. They'll have coaches go out and identify kids that were marginal last spring. When I mean marginal, I mean
borderline
potential of breaking out upwards, not downwards, but both ways. And that they'll and what they'll do is they'll just rebuild a roster in the middle of the year, and they'll move 2 or 3 kids up and a couple down. For the most part, when they're doing that, it's good for all players. The ones that move down now are playing at a level more appropriate for where they belong, and the ones moving up are proven that they deserve to move up. One of the key things there is communication. Is parents need to know before the season starts, this is what we will be doing. And so it's almost an assessment on the fly during a season rather than when it's typically done in May or June. And then the other is many organizations, most organizations in Mass Youth keep their teams the same from fall to spring, but many do have reassessments. They do movement of players between the fall and the spring season. You may see more of that taking place. So the leagues are going to start to relax on the roster freezes and allow for this. Some leagues are taking a look at implementing what's called the Club Pass. The Club Pass concept is basically where kids are. A lot of people will call it dual rostering. The last thing you want to do is put a child on 2 rosters. But if you use a Club Pass, you're allowed to move 3 players up from one team per game so they can get a look-see to see can they play at that level and vice versa. So certain leagues are going to be looking at using the Club Pass concept. So those that are attending these conferences, first off, it shows your dedication to learning more and to becoming a part of the solution. And so we invite you to talk to your representatives at the leagues that you play in to bring these ideas back to the table as they start thinking about the fall. Because technically, most of the leagues are just working on the fall right now because they will be abandoning their schedule for this spring. I do know in Bays it's come up in some of those discussions. I do know in Middlesex, I'm aware of that, and so that's going to be where you guys bring these back and say, listen, here's the flexibility that we need. We try and guide these discussions at the leagues committee meetings we usually hold them once a month. Ever since this all hit, all league presidents, we have a Saturday morning phone call every week. We've had 4 in a row, and these are scheduled. And now we're starting to talk more about this topic, Claudia, than we are about do we play or not. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, may I also add something? Is like Mike said, the unfortunate thing is some kids are going to be learning some adult lessons. I'm going to take it to the positive side. It's not only that they getting a new lesson that they have to learn, that is not only for adults, but also for kids. But I'll see it as a new opportunity to have several tryouts. Because if we go and to the club rostering or club pass, every game, every practice becomes a tryout. Right. So now we have entered the real world of soccer, where in other countries there are scouts on the same club looking to move Johnny from the 12 to the 14s because he's really playing at that level. Or like it happens to other players in England, and Wayne Rooney, he was a U16 player when he was moving to the Everton full team or first division team, premier team. Okay, but that happens by looking at him. He didn't try out for that. They say he's ripe to go there. Let's move him in there. And what happens? His first game he scores. So I think that the tryout process is great, but I believe that players love better. Today I'm going to play, and perhaps because I've been playing really well in my last 3 games, I will be invited to play in the other team. Okay, so to me, personally, it is not that I miss a tryout. I'm given a great opportunity to keep training in my individual skills, okay? Get in top takers or technique for challenges, improve myself, watch some games, and now get ready for every game and every practice become a tryout because I've been observed.
But that works if it's not going to be said like it's going to be frozen for the whole year. That's my concern. Like,
of course.
Exactly.
But you have to listen to Mike, and Mike is as his position as executive director for Massachusetts Youth Soccer, he's going to recommend that the leagues and soccer organization, because it could be the town, the travel ports, and even clubs, to use club rostering or club pass, because will be the best way to serve the population, which is the kids, and the parents will love it.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry to jump in. Is there any chance I could? Oh, sorry, someone else is speaking. Whoever wanted to speak, you.
That was me. Go ahead, Hamis. The floor is yours.
Again, sorry. I know you guys probably sick of hearing my voice.
Not really.
I love the idea, and this is just off of like the conversations that you've just had over the last, I want to say 4 or 5 minutes. The club pass concept. I love the idea of being able, to have that flexibility, but then will there be sort of, I don't want to say safeguards, and forgive me for saying this because obviously it's all about youth players and stuff like that, but knowing from where I work and knowing coaches and to be more specific, volunteer coaches that want to have their kid moved up and they know the right people to allow that flexibility, to allow that to happen. That would be my worry against the club pass concept of people, well, only within like towns, obviously, which is what we're all talking about here, is if you were to adopt a club pass concept, would it be a temporary or would it be something that you would implement for it to be a future thing? Because I do believe that it could be beneficial, but I also believe that other organizations within the umbrella of Mass Youth Soccer have or feel pretty confident with the way their process is. And I can only talk from our understanding, where we've got our 3 pillars, which is our 2 technical directors. We try to see as many, if not all, players as we can. We have the tryouts, which is the PPE, and then we also have in the spring season, in regards to putting them into the fall, like their recommendations. We use that almost like a trifecta to give us a number, and then we have that little discussion and whatnot. My concern is with the player pass concept, even though I do think it's a really, really good idea, that it could be abused. And I guess I just want to put it out there for conversation.
So several of the leagues in Massachusetts do use the club pass. Not all of them. I'd say most of them do not. They're just
Okay.
into freeze the roster, and that's life. So they'll freeze the roster. That team plays in the fall together, and then they'll allow rosters to be rejiggered over the winter time. So they deal with that, and then what happens is they'll take a look at, okay, what's the roster look like? How many kids were moved? Some leagues limit roster movement to just 3 players. That's it. You can move 3 players off and 3 players on. Otherwise, you're coming up with a whole new roster. I mean, State Cup at the highest level operates on a roster freeze basis. State Cup, you have to have the same 9 players that played on that of your roster. 9 must be on that team the whole time, and the rest can come and go. That's the highest level. So when we get down into the town, there are certain limitations on Club Pass. It's 3 players per game can be Club Passed. A player can only be activated on a Club Pass twice a season. So you're not always moving Billy from the A team to the B team, A team to the B, or D1, D2 back. So you can build in limitations to eliminate abuse for sure. I just going to touch on one thing is, yes, we are for the most part, the majority is volunteer based. We only have maybe a dozen or more towns that have DOCs. The rest are managed by for the most part knowledgeable and well-meaning individuals. But you're always going to get somebody who wants to play a game. And whether you have a club class or whether you have a coach assessment as a part of the tryouts, whatever it is, it could be gamed. And I'm a big believer. The second that you start to administer your program based on the lowest common denominator, you have the lowest program around. So to me is that you address those concerns right up front with the coaches and parents that this is how the club class program works. We will be monitoring it. Anybody that's seen to be abusing it, there's going to be consequences. That this is for the development of the children, and once again, I tell you, I get a lot of stuff at the office, and most of the time, if a complaint or a situation comes our way, I will ask. I have one standard question I ask. Did the coach and your organization with the coach have preseason communication outlining expectations, roles, and responsibilities for players, coaches, and parents? I will tell you, never once have I gotten a complaint risen to the level at the state where there was a preseason discussion. Everything that comes my way is 0 preseason expectations with parents, 0 preseason outline of roles and responsibilities with coaches and parents and such. When there's none of that, we hear about it. When that's in place, we hear nothing. And so that is a big part. And you bring up a lot of people don't understand Club Pass. It's a whole new concept to a lot of people. Middlesex had it for years. And and it was abused way back, and they rejiggered it, did away with it. South Coast, I believe, allows it. The old Pioneer and Roots, now Roots is going to be back in the Master Soccer system. They allow it, so it can be used. The key is at the highest levels of Division I and Division II, which is where it really should be applied for the most part. Is you have to have a roster freeze date because you don't want somebody to do a last minute rejiggering of a roster, because the team is now qualified for for your league playoffs and or for MTOC. So some organizations do Club Pass fall only roster rejiggering with 3-player moves, and then come springtime, a frozen roster for the spring in totality. They don't do Club Pass in the spring. They use it in the fall to make sure that the kids are being placed correctly because there could have been a faulty tryout from the previous spring. And so it's a check and balance with the tryout in the spring to use club pass in the fall, then freeze the roster in the fall, and then the next spring, roster freeze, that's your team. So, yeah. No, this is a great conversation. Great. Yeah, I'm glad. Wish more people were on it.
Okay, Matt. Matt he wants to say something about it because his organization uses.
Yep. So I'm from Westford Youth Soccer and Westford Knight Soccer Club. So in Middlesex, Middlesex has the concept, the idea of Town Pass, call it. So with Town Pass, you can use up to 4 players per game. Those players can only play for a particular team 3 times in a season. And they can only play up. They can't play down. So I think that takes the abuse out of it, right? You can't have a D1 player playing down on a D3 or a D4 team. They can only play up or they can play equal, right? So if a town in Westford, we often have multiple Division 4 or Division 5 teams, they could play sideways. They could play for the other D4 team if they're a D4 player. They could move up and play D3, D2, D1, but you can't play backwards. So I think that controls it. But yeah, I mean, it is up to the town to do it. So yeah, I mean, it might be picked based on, doing a favor for a Division 4 coach. Say, hey, let's do a favor for you. We'll let your kid play up. But typically in Westford, we're only using it when a roster is short, needs players for a game. We don't feel it's right for a kid that's not on the roster to take playing time away from a kid who is on the roster. So that's typically the only time we'll use it, and it's our coaches working with our age directors to kind of make it work.
Thank you for that, and it's nice to hear that some people are finding success in it. I think one of the considerations you always have to watch out for is no matter what's put in place, somebody's going to try to manipulate it. And you just have to make sure the communication is strong with the organizations to make sure you put a stop to it as quickly as possible. And that means that you have to add more conditions to it, then that's what you have to do. When it first came about, or the theory behind it, is just trying to make sure that kids have an opportunity to play. Teams are not canceling games because they don't have enough players. But it has been manipulated. So, as Mike had mentioned before, even in the Middlesex, it didn't always go the way they wanted it to go until cooler heads got together and said, let's make this right. And it is an ongoing process. It's not just put it in place and let it do whatever it's going to do.
And I guess also our town pass is not available during for playoff games, obviously for MTalk, things like that. It's only for season or regular season games.
League games.
League games, yes. Yep.
Matt, like I just said there in the chat, thanks. Definitely answered my question. That answered like half my question. Well, definitely the half that that you were answering, obviously. The second half of that would be like within our own organizations, how do we control people saying this person needs to move up, this person needs to move down, or not move down, but this person needs to move up, and it being, I don't want to say reliable and valid for that person to move up and down. I know I waffle on, but like that is like my main question. Within our own organization underneath this umbrella, how do we qualify that, I guess?
That's, I think, the crux of building teams. So in Westford, I have multiple hats. I am an age director. I'm girls 5-6 age director is one of the hats. So I've been building those teams, for 5, 6, 7 years, however long it's been. It's all blurry now. So I think, so that's the crux of it. So I have eval data, and we don't call them tryouts in Westford. It's skill assessments is what we hold every June. But I have that assessment data for these players, these girls 5-6 players, all the way back to when they were in second grade. That's when we start. So I can look at their the coach evaluations, and then when they hit the third grade and up, then they start attending the skill assessments, and then I have that data too. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm going to go based on when I build teams for this upcoming fall. You know, and I think Mike and Loy have alluded to it, that these kids are going to learn adult lessons. You know, the bummer about it will be those kids that have drastically improved over the course of this year, and I'm not going to be able to justify, you know, having them move up if I don't know it, right? And I don't have any quantifiable data to support moving them up. It's always been nice in the past having our June skill assessments. We use UMass Lowell. They come in, the men's and women's team comes in, and they do the skill assessments for us. So we have independent data, and it's always been nice when a parent confronts me. You know, why isn't little Susie up on the Division I team? Why is she down here in the Division III team? And I can watch
all these external factors of parents going, this person should be up here, and then it becomes you know, it causes argument. You know what I mean? Obviously, like what you put in the group, like in the chat, I am aware that, you know, especially within Middlesex, we can allow a player to play up or play across. So far, no issue has been taken. My worry is that when this becomes like, this is what we're going to be doing, this club pass concept is going to be now implemented along, players can play up. It's just, it could cause a lot more trouble within town organizations where you've got parents, you've got people's opinions, and it's almost influencing the coach to tell what they want to say, and then it just becomes a problem for the organization, if that makes sense.
So
I know it's a loaded question, but it's
let me help out there. Is that first off, you know, certain leagues use it and certain leagues don't, and some leagues that don't use it are very much for the same reasons you're talking about right here. Is why do we want to create anxiety and angst and gamesmanship, and you know, and somebody sliding somebody, you know, a free soccer ball under the table to get my kid on another team? You know, there are in Middlesex, for example, who has used it on and off. There are several organizations that they don't use it for that very reason. They've opted out of using the club pass. It's not mandatory. If the league allows it, it's an option to a town or a club in their toolbox. But if they allow it, but they don't have to use it. And you know, that's so you know, as we're talking about, is one of the key things to start to focus on is getting back to the issue that Claudia brought up, is how can we bring parity back to a process that's being short-circuited. And that's what this really is to focus on, is to saying is that, you know, I ran the Methuen travel program for 11 years. I ran tryouts for 9 years, and we brought in outsiders and everything. And but you know, always had to deal with is, hold on a second, how come my son or daughter was put on this team? They're better than so-and-so. You know, their coach gave them, you know, on a scale of 1 to 5, gave them a 5. Well, the coach got everybody a 5. So, you know, and one coach's 5 is another coach's 2. And so, you know, so there's a lot of different parts of the equation. The best tool is for a DOC or a director, you know, not to coach teams and to be out observing. And so when a parent says, hey, listen, my child shouldn't be playing on this D3, they should be on the D2 team. Well, great, that's awesome. I'm going to go out and watch. First, never announce you're going to go out and watch. You secretly, you know, put your mask on and your helmet and your wig, and you go out and watch. And then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you have your own personal observation. But the thing is to let a parent know, listen, we've got a process in place. This is where we're at. But out of fairness, we're going to do everything possible to make sure that your child is slotted in the best pace possible. And I'm only talking because we're coming off of a spring that really never happened. And so we're going to have to modify that discussion with most parents will get it. They'll get it. And the children that, you know, that maybe they were on the bubble at tryouts last year, and this is what Claudia's talking about, and they've been practicing because, you know, this is especially somebody going into 8th grade. This is the last hurrah. They're getting up there. I'm going to make that D1 team. I've been practicing because I know the high school coach will be watching from the trees because they're not allowed to watch, but they'll be somewhere in their disguise watching. And all of a sudden you tell, listen, I'm sorry, but you're going to be on the D2 team next fall because we didn't have tryouts. But if you have a game plan for that child to say, but listen, here's what we will be doing in order to give dynamic assessments during the fall season so that come springtime, we feel that we can place you on the team that matches your skill level. So that's it for me, folks. I'm cooked and fried.
Mike,
Thank you so much.
You were very helpful to have on board with this one to answer a lot of these questions. So thank you for that.
Can I ask a question about player insurance for the summer?
Yes.
Mike, I heard you mention the spring season. You guys might going all the way until August 31st. So I think typically insurance would end on July 31st, correct?
No, insurance and a player's registration. Let's talk. Is it insurance for fields or insurance for players?
It's that player insurance, that fee we pay.
Okay.
We pay, right?
Once a child registers, they are covered from September 1 to August 31st.
Oh, it's September. Okay. Okay.
It's a soccer year. Yep.
Okay. I for some reason in Westford we thought it was August 1st to July 31st. So.
Well, I mean, but if you guys want to pay for the summer, we'll gladly take. It's you're covered up to August 31st. Now,
okay.
here's the for the small group here, and this will be on announcements that are coming out once we hear from the governor what we can and cannot do. So I apologize for not getting more information out because there's really nothing more to put out, honestly, until we hear from the governor about when we assemblages and Department of Health and so forth. But what's going to happen if you have if you got a COI, certificate of insurance for a field, typically goes up to the end of June. If you're able to and you're willing, your organization says, listen, we're going to do as much summer activities as possible. All you need to do is send Rachel Wu an email saying, hey, we have a COI for the Bill Smith Field here in Westford. It expires June 30th. Can we get that extended to August 31st? And we'll take care of it. Just a simple email, no need to reapply or anything like that.
Okay.
If you don't have COIs for fields, it's the same process. Just apply, and we'll get it done for you. Our goal and plan is to reduce the barriers to getting kids back on the fields. That's our goal. Get them out there.
And just one other thing I had, as you talked about, right, getting the kids out there. And so if there is still getting the kids out there, is that assuming social distancing and assemblage orders are eliminated, or is that even with players?
So there's a couple organizations that are discussing, of course, youth sports in general. There's a National Council on Youth Sports. They have offices in D.C. It's a national lobbying group. There's a lot of discussion about, okay, how can we phase in getting kids? Now, we have letters that we've written to the governor asking them to specifically carve out youth sports as a part of the assemblage process. I get the same things. This is from the governor's office and everything. It's interesting when they first put out the first assemblage order for 25 people, they allowed sporting activities. I don't know if in the actual order, the way it read is that athletic events do not need to be canceled or postponed, but no spectators or attendees are permitted. So that was the 25 people. That was March 15th. And then the one we're working off of now is the March 23rd, which explicitly states this order applies to all athletic activities that bring participants in close physical contact, whether they are conducted indoors or outdoors, are prohibited even when involving 10 or fewer people. So that's why the city of Boston put tie wraps on basketball nets, took down tennis courts, chained places, don't let people out there. And the argument was put out there saying, well, the order states that bring participants in close physical contact. So there were parents out in fields passing a soccer ball back and forth with their child and a friend. No close physical conduct. They shut it down.
Yeah.
So, whoops, somebody sounds like they're in an airplane. Okay. So what we're trying to do is to work with the Department of Public Health. We're working with the lacrosse group, with the softball group, and so forth. The ones that are, have enough guts to talk to the, governor's office and Department of Public Health. And we're trying to say, give us some guidance here. Just don't do this general sports, because the general sports really had to do with professional sports. No spectators, meaning that the Revs could hold a game with no spectators. The Sox could hold a game with no spectators. So when they start coming out with the new assemblage orders, we're going to pay close attention to what they do and do not permit. We're going to get points of clarification. It very much could start being no close contact if they lift the assemblage order, which could be a lot of kids out in a field, 6 feet apart, passing, individual skill development, getting physical fitness, that kind of stuff.
And that's a great idea, on paper, right? But it's then how do you control those third grade boys from jumping on the ground and wrestling with each other when they're supposed to be 6 feet apart? That's a lot of pressure to put on a coach that's running the session.
And the coaches had that same pressure last year, the year before, and the year before. Kids jumping on goal frames and doing chin-ups, climbing goal nets, spitting on each other. These are things that, that you control it the best way you can control it. And that's where it comes down to clear and concise communication with the parent up front, stating this will not be permitted. And if your child does it, you will be at the fields, not shopping at Market Basket, and you'll take them home.
Something that we've done in Wilmington, we don't try to threaten the kids, but we also say, and we also definitely try to eliminate isolating children, but we also, like what Mike just said, is have the kids there and look, hey, we're here to play soccer. What are you here to do? Are you here to play soccer? Ask them maybe once, twice, whatever your limit is. Wherever that limit is, you say, okay, cool. Your mom and dad's over there. I want you to go and stand with your mom and dad